All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest, most powerful ideas in all of economics, market equilibrium. We're going to see how literally millions of separate individual decisions somehow come together to create this predictable, almost elegant order in the marketplace. Pretty amazing.
But to really get this, let's start with a bit of a mystery. How on earth could a fire at a factory in Japan make a used car in India more expensive? I know, it sounds totally disconnected, right? Well, stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly how those two things are linked, using the tools we're about to unpack.
So where does the answer begin? It all starts by finding that one single point where what buyers want and what sellers want perfectly match up.
And that magic point is what we call market equilibrium. You can think of it as the market's perfect sweet spot. It's the one special price, we'll call it P star, and the one quantity, Q star, where everybody's happy. Every single person who wants to buy at that price finds a seller, and every seller who wants to sell finds a buyer. No leftovers, no one left wanting. It's the ultimate point of agreement.
What's so cool about this is that the market is always trying to get back to this point on its own. It's constantly self-correcting. A great way to picture it is like a ball inside a bowl. No matter where you push it, it always wants to roll back down and settle right there at the bottom. That bottom is equilibrium.
So what does that pushing and pulling actually look like? Well, if the price is too high, you get what's called a surplus. Think about clearance racks piled high with clothes nobody's buying. Sellers have way too much stuff, so what do? They have a sale. They cut prices, which pushes the price back down towards that sweet spot. On the flip side, if the price is too low, you get a shortage. This is when a new phone drops and there are lines around the block. Everyone wants one, but there aren't enough to go around. Sellers see that massive demand and, you guessed it, they raise the price, pushing it back up towards equilibrium.
This amazing self-correcting force has a really famous name, coined by the one and only Adam Smith. He called it the invisible hand. It's like the hidden engine of the market, always working behind the scenes to bring everything back into balance.
So how does this so-called invisible hand actually do its thing? Well, it really has two main jobs. First, prices decide who gets what. Simple as that. If something is scarce, the price rations it out to those who are willing and able to pay. But the second job is the real genius part. Prices are signals. A high price is like a giant flashing sign to producers that says, hey, people love this, make more of it. And a low price is like a quiet whisper saying, maybe ease up on producing this, demand isn't so hot. It's an incredible automatic coordination system that works without anyone being in charge. Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. Not at all. We can actually use this model to predict how real-life events are going to affect prices. In fact, there's a simple little checklist we can use every time.
And here it is, a super simple four-step process for breaking down any market change. First, you identify the specific market we're talking about. Second, you figure out if the event affects the sellers, that's supply, or the buyers, that's demand. 3, you decide which way the change is going. Is there more of it or less? And 4, you just look at what happened to the price and quantity. So let's use this right now to solve our car puzzle.
Okay, here we go. Step 1. We're looking at the market for new cars. That factory fire in Japan caused a shortage of semiconductor chips, and you can't build a new car without chips, right? So the supply of new cars went way down. On a graph, that's a shift to the left for the supply curve. And the result? Exactly what you'd expect. New cars suddenly got a lot more expensive, and there were way fewer of them to buy.
And this is where it all clicks together. This is the chain reaction. Now we jump to step 2, the market for used cars. Think about it. New cars and used cars are substitutes for each other. So when new cars become super expensive and hard to find, what do people do? They rush over to the used car lot instead. All of a sudden, the demand for used cars shoots through the roof. That's a shift to the right for the demand curve. And the result? The price of used cars goes up, and the number of used cars sold goes up too. And just like that, puzzle solved. A fire in Japan really did make a used car in India more expensive.
So, we've seen that the market naturally finds this balance point all on its own. But why is that specific point considered so good? What makes economists look at equilibrium and think, yep, that's the best possible outcome? The answer starts with something called consumer surplus. This is basically the hidden win that you, the buyer, get in a transaction. It's the gap between the absolute maximum price you were willing to pay for something and the price you actually ended up paying.
Let me give you a perfect example. Let's say you're dying to go to a huge cricket match. You're so hyped you'd be willing to pay, say, 10,000 rupees for a ticket. But you hunt around and manage to snag one for 8,000. That 2,000 rupee difference? Boom. That's your consumer surplus. It's pure value, like free money you got to keep in your pocket.
And of course, there's a flip side to this coin. Sellers get their own win, and it's called producer surplus. This is simply the difference between the price they got paid and the bare minimum it cost them to make the thing in the first place. You can basically think of it as their profit on that one sale.
And here's the big takeaway, the reason economists get so excited about this. That free market equilibrium, it's the one single point that makes the total pie, that's the consumer surplus plus the producer surplus, as big as it can possibly be. Any other price, higher or lower, and that total pie starts to shrink. That's what we mean when we say the market is efficient. It wrings out every last drop of value for society as a whole.
But of course, we know that markets don't always exist in a perfect little bubble. Governments step in all the time to try and influence the outcome for various reasons. So what happens when we decide to poke this incredibly efficient machine?
Let's start with one of the most common interventions, taxes. The government decides to put a tax on a product. The big question is, who actually ends up paying for it? Do the buyers pay more? Do the sellers just eat the cost? The real answer is, well, it's a little complicated. It depends. It all comes down to a concept called elasticity, which is just a fancy way of asking, how much do you change your behavior when the price changes? If demand is elastic, it means you're really responsive. Think luxury goods. If the price of a fancy watch doubles, you'll probably just say, no thanks. But if demand is inelastic, you're unresponsive. This is for necessities, like essential medicine. Even if the price goes up, you still have to buy it. So, here's the golden rule. You ready? The tax burden always falls heavier on the side of the market that's less flexible, the more inelastic side. So for something like cigarettes, where demand is pretty inelastic because of addiction, buyers end up paying most of the tax in the form of higher prices. But for something like a luxury yacht where demand is super elastic, nobody needs one, the sellers have to absorb most of the tax because if they raise the price, all their customers would just walk away. But taxes also create this other kind of invisible cost. By raising the price, a tax stops some deals from happening that would have happened otherwise. That lost value, those win-win trades that never take place, is called deadweight loss. It's a little piece of that big economic pie that just disappears. It's the social cost of making the market less efficient.
And finally, sometimes governments skip taxes and just control prices directly. They can set a price ceiling, like rent control, which is a maximum legal price. The goal is to make housing more affordable, but if you set it below the equilibrium price, you inevitably create a shortage. Or they can set a price floor, like a minimum wage, which is a minimum legal price. The goal is to help workers, but if you set it above equilibrium, you can create a surplus of workers, which means unemployment. Both of these actions, while often well-intentioned, come with very predictable consequences.
And that really brings us to the final big question here. The invisible hand is, without a doubt, a powerhouse of efficiency. It's fantastic at creating the most total value. But is the most efficient outcome always the most fair outcome? And that fundamental tension, the constant tug of war between efficiency and fairness, is honestly one of the biggest and most important debates in all of economics, and it's one we're still grappling with every single day.